Okay, welcome everybody to a special live stream that dives deep into the heart of Nobody studio culture. And I love this mantra, right? Brains that meditate together, innovate together. And so, welcome to the show, PK. It's so great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Sejal. It's great to be here, and I'm excited for our conversation and to discuss a little bit about Nobody culture.
Yes. So, welcome everyone. My name is Sejal Thakkar again. I'm the Chief Culture Officer at Nobody Studios. And I started off with that phrase because my story with one of our valued nobodies that's joining me today, PK, is actually began in a meditation session. And so, for over 2 years, I was hosting these bi monthly 30-minute meditation sessions. And PK came to one of those sessions. I was hosting those with I want to give a shout out to our resident shaman, Tom Kotlarak, who was there to guide us. And PK was there, and here we are today. So it's been an exciting adventure. I want to tell everybody about our journey together. And really, I truly, as I was preparing for this episode, it really reminded me of just how meaningful connections and shared experiences can really build us and be the building blocks of both creativity and innovation at our studio. So again, PK, you said something during our prep that really got my attention. You talked about your love for Run DMC's Raising Hell. So let's start there. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this has inspired you? I'm not a total rap person, I'll tell you right off the bat, but I want to hear about your love for this group, for
Yeah,
this
for
record.
sure. So this record was, or this tape actually, was the first piece of music that I owned as a child. The first piece of music that was, truly my own. When we had moved here from South Africa in the late 80s, my mother's uncle worked at a record shop in Times Square called King Carol Music. And so he was a huge, huge music head. And so when we had come over, he had a tape for my brother and he had a tape for myself. And the tape for myself was Run DMC's Raising Hell, which kind of shaped my entire musical journey from there. I was always huge into music. Music is part of all my earliest memories. One of my earliest memories as a 3-year-old was trying to play my father's turntable, specifically the Gambler by Kenny Rogers. There was just something about that song that I loved, and it resonated with me. And as a 3-year-old, I just want to keep hearing it over and over and over again. So I would pretty much mess up the needles on his turntable trying to play this record as someone that shouldn't have been playing around with a turntable at that age. But that was, the earlier memories. And then Run DMC's Raising Hell, as I said, shaped my musical. I would say music became my first love after that tape, because at the time, hip hop was something fresh, something new, something that I could just tell by the sound that it was different and it was going to be part of the future for some reason. It just resonated with me, and there was just something within me that just was just so drawn to it. And then, culturally, hip hop is such an inclusive art form. There's no color lines really. You could see this from early artists like Run DMC, going to the Beastie Boys, which was right around the same time, and then Cypress Hill. These are all people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and what brings them together is that love of emceeing, the love of music, the love of the culture. Hip hop is also referred to as just simply the culture, and so it's just something that just really, really stands out to me. And it's so powerful how all these different cultures come together and understand that their contributions as a whole are greater than just what they can do by themselves. And so that resonates with me, and it kind of segues into where I am today with Nobody Studios. Same kind of deal where it's just all inclusive. Anyone can pull up a seat at the table. It's just something that anyone could be a part of. There's no requirements to be a nobody.
Oh my God, I love that. I just love hearing how music inspires us all differently. For me personally, and this might shock you. I don't know if I mentioned this to you when we got together a couple of months back, but country music country tunes have always resonated with me. And for some reason, there's just they bring a sense of like familiarity and comfort to me. And so just like your affinity with Run DMC's music, my connection with country music, when I tell people that, it's surprising, right? To a lot of people, they're like, what? You like country music? But, and then when you put that in the context of our global venture studio, it really is a great reminder. And I'm glad that we started off this live stream with this story, because it's a great reminder that inspiration really knows no boundaries, right? And whether it's
and country music's
music,
come a long way. I mean, country music has had its time of looking pretty homogenous, but there were country music was inspired by Mississippi Delta blues and other forms of music that came before it, and it's come a long way since then. You see Nelly doing music with Florida Georgia Line, and things like that. So it's awesome just seeing, and then the melding between hip hop and country now. It's almost like they're one and the same. It's just music. It's not, there's the need for genres is slowly dissipating, it seems.
Yeah, it is. I totally agree. And so let's go a little bit deeper. I want to see PK I did my first making of a nobody with Mark last Friday, our chief nobody, Mark McNally. And so I'm going to ask you the same question I asked him, is I want to see the world through PK's eyes. And you've got this really interesting backstory of your history from traveling all the way from South Africa to the United States. So take us back to the beginning and tell us about, I'm sure that there's so many unique things you can share with us about how they might have influenced who you are today.
Yeah, for sure. And even before my story as a South African that moved to America wouldn't be possible without parts of other parts of my family that made the trek to South Africa. So in the late 1800s, this is the part of my family that I've researched and know a little bit more about. But in the late 1800s, my family had moved from South India to South Africa. So I'm sixth generation South African, and they had moved there because at the time, the colonies were looking for sugar production, and South Indians were very, very good at cutting cane and cutting sugar and cultivating sugar. And so they brought these South Indians to South Africa as indentured servants. And then my family, being the educators that they were in South India, saw an opportunity with all these farmers in South Africa who are having children to educate in a different place with a different opportunity. And so that was how my family ended up in South Africa. And then, while in South Africa, our family was pretty much raised with that background, that South Indian background. But that's not the only bloodlines that I have. My mother's side of the family is German and Xhosa. Xhosa is one of the tribes of South Africa. But because of the things that were going on at the time, it was easier for her to assimilate into the Indian culture and become a part of the Indian culture. And so, that was the culture that we learned. It wasn't until years later when we moved back to South Africa that I had met my grandmother for the first time. And so that's a little bit about when we were in South Africa. From there, we moved to New York City, and that takes us back to the Run DMC. And Run DMC became synonymous with America for me, along with Juicy Fruit and Gray's Papaya, which were just, and it was all the same uncle that gave me all of those those things when we came here. And he's like, you're American now, you need to learn about American things. And so he's like, here's some Juicy Fruit. I had never had Juicy Fruit gum before. Like, I'd never tasted a hot dog before, like things like that, where he was just kind of our cultural bridge to New York City, because he had been here for so long. And then from New York City, we moved to a small Italian neighborhood called Lodi, New Jersey. That was a culture shock, to say the least, because everyone there was pretty much Italian, and here comes this dark-skinned child that was pretty quiet, pretty shy, and didn't really talk much, but that was how kids can be. And so that he was someone that they could pick on. And that led to getting into fights and getting into arguments and whatnot. But that didn't dissuade my love for Italian food, Italian culture, because I still had Italian friends, and I got to know family life and their family life through that, I got invited to Sunday dinner where Nonna Francesca was making her famous sauce with the brajol and things like that. And so it just made me realize, like, you can't generalize the actions. That specifically made me realize you can't generalize the actions of entire groups just by the way that a couple of people act. And so to tie it back to Nobuddies Studios, I mean, it's just my love for culture stems from all these different places that my family's been or comes from, and it's just all encompassing. Like, I don't see any reason to exclude anyone or to look at people in a certain way because you don't understand. If you don't understand, ask them. And a lot of times you'll get to see the similarities between your culture and theirs rather than the differences. The differences are mostly superficial and surface level. It's not really something that needs that's really that deep. So that's just a little bit about me, where I came from, and up to childhood, if you will.
Look at that, PK. We're inspiring people already. So we've got Min Bogeda, our director of our Idea Lab, and he's like, not many people know that I'm rather partial to a bit of hip hop myself. Min, I had no idea. And guess what? We've inspired him to find some hip hop country music. Yes. Yeah. All right, Min, send some recommendations my way. But I want to keep talking about what you were just saying, PK, because so much of that resonates. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, is how our global vibes and diverse talents come together, and how we come together bring out some incredible creative outcomes, right? So I just learned a lot about you in hearing your background, about your sort of interactions with Italian folks growing up and how that's impacted you. I have my own history with that, and I agree completely with you. You cannot judge the action of and stereotype into generalizations based on actions of some individuals. So I'm glad that we share that. And I met you during one of our meditation sessions, and I just remember feeling just an immediate connection towards you, and I the reason why I held those meditation sessions is because I think it is important when we are, especially for a studio like ours that's global, that has people that have all these different experiences and rich cultural histories, like you just described yours, is to bring them together in a space that we can meditate together, and I started off with that phrase of brains that meditate together, innovate that together. So can you share a little bit about just, how has coming to if there's a memorable experience from joining one of those meditation experiences, maybe if it helped you in the work that you're doing now, has it made an impact on you? I've met so many incredible people during those sessions. Our chief nobody, Mark McNally, has stopped by a few times, Min Bogeda. I've even had Ray Leonard Jr., CEO of Ovations, some of the team members from our newcos, even some angel investors come through, and they've shared their own experiences about how that meditation session or participating in those experiences kind of helped them in becoming more creative or doing that self-discovery. I'd love to hear about how it's impacted you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this one really hits home to how we first met, as you had mentioned, at those Monday morning meditations. And, at first I was able to join. And then after a couple of weeks, we were heavy into the crowdfund. And there were a couple of meetings that I had scheduled for Mondays that conflicted with our schedule. So, I figured, okay, that's the end of me joining the meditation group. And, that was going to be it. But something happened that really really resonated with me. And it was, you guys had decided to reschedule the group to Sunday, which made me back part of the group and be able to join the group again. And it made me realize, this is my soul family. This is not just a bunch of people that, got together and decided that they want to meditate for, their own gain or anything like that. It was a family that really cared about each other and how each other's souls were doing and who, needed help with what at what point. Not everyone likes to show their vulnerability, and I'm certainly one of those people. Growing up, it was like you're a boy. You don't show your feelings. You don't cry. You don't you don't need to. It's almost like stoicism was the intended goal of becoming a man. And I realized by joining those sessions that, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's almost empowering to be vulnerable. It allowed me to discuss, you had discussed one of your friends that passed away, and then that allowed me to discuss, that a couple of my friends had passed away in the same year. And it was just something that I hadn't been able to really speak about with other people, other than the people that, were directly involved with those people's lives until that point, because it was just something that I had to pretty much like let go of so that I didn't have to feel. But joining the group and joining with Tom and, realizing that it's okay to feel like that. And you need to feel like that to get through those feelings in order to, we don't move on, but we get better at dealing with those types of emotions and using them in a positive manner to to connect with other people, because other people go through the same thing and we don't know it until we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. So it was almost like I was innovating my soul in that sense, like building on things that I had learned and things that I wanted to where I wanted to see myself and where I wanted to go. And those sessions really helped fortify those goals that I had. And it was just amazing to see that you had sent a picture to the group about us speaking today, and it was at the airport in Milwaukee after our sweat lodge session that we had done over there. And in the background, I'm very perceptive, and my attention to detail is sometimes gets me in trouble. But in this case, it was amazing to see that the word innovate was on the wall in the airport in our picture for that picture. And like that, and then I remember asking you, did you notice that the word innovate is there? And you said, no, I had no idea. And it wasn't like we planned it. It wasn't like we said, oh, there's the word innovate, let's take a picture in front of it. Like afterwards, we just realized that this relationship and this just our journeys is so serendipitous. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
Oh my God. And we haven't even talked about from there. We've continued our connection. We ended up actually going to a spiritual retreat, what I call a spiritual retreat, and went deeper into our spiritual journey together. I mean, the impact of mindfulness is undeniable, right? Like it's not about, for me, it's not about just clearing that mental clutter, right? But my creativity has gone through the roof. Like I'm coming up with like ideas and things that like, this is something that's never happened to me in my life before, where I was coming up with ideas for companies. What? Like I'm talking to people, and I'm in these meditation sessions. Like I said, I've had so many great conversations with people, and it's unlocking parts of me, just like you're talking about, that I didn't even know were possible. And so I want to continue on that real quickly, because I also want to just talk about how it helps us just collaborate together. So when we first started, and when I first started at Nobuddies Studios, I was crafting an onboarding program, right? That was one of my major tasks, because we knew that we're scaling people. So as I was creating the onboarding program, I wanted to spice things up, and I came up with this concept of assigning a nobody, right? So an NOBUDDY, a nobody, to every new person on the team. And the way that I visioned it was that this was a person that was more than a mentor, right? It was a resource. It was like almost like a guiding light for that person coming into our studio, especially when most of us haven't even met, right? Like we're all in different places, we're all over the globe. And so I wanted to create a support network that could be a go-to for that person during onboarding, so they don't feel like a stranger, and it's all about, for me, is how do we create a sense of belonging and a community from day one for that new person joining the studio. And then recently you sent me a text message, and you said Nobuddy, and you spelled it KNOW buddy, right? And it was like the aha moment, when you're looking to find the perfect word for something, and you're like, you've been trying to describe it. And the minute I read that, I was like, that captures it so perfectly. That's what I want the mentorship to look like: a connection and a shared understanding of like knowledge and sharing of knowledge. And let's be honest, it was super catchy and cool too, right? So I wrote a message to our onboarding team right away, and I said, I love PK's idea of calling it Nobuddies. And right away, Kiara our idea sorceress was like, I'm updating our onboarding materials now. And it's just, it shows that it creates that space of collaboration, right? And so I don't know if you want to add anything on that, but that was like huge just recently that I wanted to share with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to my attention to detail. Like, nobody was good because we're nobodies, and so we took no and put it in front of buddy. But to me, like, nobody, and how important our words are and being impeccable with our words in general. The fact that it was nobody, it kind of, I got it, but like it didn't quite resonate with me because it's like nobody, like you don't have a buddy or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas these people are, my personal nobody that I was assigned was Dr. Eric Reese, and he was my nobody. He was in the know. He's a co-founder that started from the beginning, that knows what's going on in the studio, knows what's going on with different people, who to talk to about what, who to help out, and so. To me, he was a nobody with KNOW because of how much he knew, and so that was just became the word that I started using to describe it for myself. And then when it came time for us to start reaching out to our investors and assigning them nobodies, I felt like we're using the word nobody already. Why don't we use nobody for this? But our investors are nobodies too, so it's that term nobody can be used for anything and everything. When you're helping someone get acclimated to the studio and the way that our company functions, our core values, and who we really are as a team.
I love it. And this is, again, a great example of where like the best ideas can come from the unexpected place, right? I mean, and I love it. I actually think that nobody is, like I said, you captured it in a way that I couldn't even think of. And this is why I love our culture at Nobody Studios is we're constantly open to getting feedback and sharing information with one another. So is there an example of maybe a nobody that who's your nobody, an experience you might have had, or maybe something that you've experienced with somebody else and a nobody? Because I think that's really important, like to make people feel comfortable right away and have a resource that they can go to is such a huge one of something that makes our culture very unique, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, Dr. E is my official assigned nobody, but he wasn't the only one that helped me get acclimated and helped me join, and get and buy into the culture and understand the culture. You were certainly one of those nobodies. There's also Min and Kyle and Greg and Tiffany, and it was just a whole, it just felt like a whole bunch of people that wanted us all to succeed. It wasn't just about themselves succeeding. It wasn't about doing what they needed to do. It was about all of us succeeding together, because there's no way we can do this, achieve this goal of building 100 companies in 5 years if everybody is not 100% bought into the culture and what it is we're trying to do. Because the pace we're trying to move at, we have to all know what's going on, and nobody's help you, expedite that journey into knowing.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, look, we are already at time. I knew this was going to happen when I had you come on the show. We're going to have you come back because there's so many other questions I want to ask you. But PK, I just want to tell you, I really appreciate you being a part of this journey with me. I appreciate and share our, I love how we send each other messages on WhatsApp and Slack and make an effort to stay connected with one another. I think that really reinforces what we're striving for is that a lot of people are always telling me, God, it must be difficult to create a positive, safe, and inclusive culture while, you're building this remotely. And this is a perfect example of how it can be done, right? Yes, it takes more effort and it takes more time. But if we continue to create those spaces of mindfulness, of creativity, of where we can have these deeper conversations like we're doing today, I know that we can not only do it for one company, but we can do it for all 100. So is there anything else that you want to leave everybody with before we sign out for the day?
I mean, I think we've discussed quite a bit, and I'm just so happy to be a part of this team and grow with the Nobody Studios team and all of our new co's and and all of our partners that are coming in. And it's just such an exciting time in life in general. And I love building things, and this gives us a chance to build something that's going to really be impactful for the world, not just the city, but the world.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Join us next week. I'm really looking forward to talking about human factors. You know, we talk a lot about technology at Nobody Studios and all of the wonderful companies that we're building, but we have to remind ourselves that when it comes to culture, adding back the human factors, the elements, it becomes super important. So I'm having a very, very dear friend and connection on LinkedIn, a supporter of Nobody Studios, Brian Kelly. He's going to be joining me next week to talk to us about how we're making our culture at Nobody Studios more humanly and putting our people first. So we'll see you next time. Thanks again, PK, for joining me today.
Thank you, Sejal.
Okay,
Take care,
bye.
everyone.